Okay, I'm filming this late. It's 5:30. I'm still at work. Oblique asymptotes. I know you can't see that. It's oblique asymptotes. Okay? This is for the Bobo bottom, the bottom, bigger on top. X to the fourth, X to the third. Okay? I have no horizontal asymptotes. But if you're in a situation where with the bottom, bigger on top, no, if the difference in degree 4 and 3 is 1, the difference is linear, and you'll have what's called an oblique asymptote, just basically a line on an angle. Okay? Your graph will seek to adapt to that as x gets very big or very small. Let's divide this out, this divided by this, and see what we get. All right, I've got all this long division. Notice I've got this, everything adjusted for those place values that need a 0. X cubed, we're dividing 3x to the fourth plus 0x cubed minus x squared plus 0x plus 0. We're dividing it by basically x cubed minus x squared plus 0x plus 1. So I need a 0 there. X goes into x cubed into 3x to the fourth, 3x times. Okay? This needs a 3 and I need another x. So 3x times x cubed is 3x to the fourth. I've already changed the signs. I've already worked this out. So remember, this times this is 3x to the fourth. They match up. That's my check. Then 3x times negative x squared is a negative 3x cubed. And 3x times 0 and 3x times 1 is 3x. And then I've already changed the signs. So minus, that became a plus, that became a minus, and I combined. Okay, so I've already distributed, you see the red and blue, I've already distributed the negative to all 4 of those. Gone, I have 3x cubed minus a negative x squared comes down to 0, a 0 and negative 3x, and I bring down to 0. Again, first term, x cubed goes into 3x cubed plus 3 times. 3 times x cubed is 3x cubed. Ignore the signs, I've already changed everything. 3x cubed, 3 times negative x squared is negative 3x squared. 3 times 0 is 0x, and 3 times 1 is 3. And then I went ahead, put a negative, made that negative a plus. I don't even mess with the 0, and I put a negative there. So I've distributed the negatives, combined. It's gone. A negative x squared and plus 3x is 2x squared. Negative 3x just comes down to 0, and this minus 3. Okay? X cubed does not go into x squared. So this is my remainder. Okay? So look, this 3x plus 3 is the equation of my oblique asymptote. Okay, that's a line, right? Okay? This remainder, let's try this again. Here's my answer, 3x plus 3 plus the remainder of 2x squared blah 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 over our divisor x cubed. Now remember, as x gets very big, infinity, remember, bigger denominator, this goes to 0. Kind of like, remember, bigger on bottom, this approaches 0. This goes bye-bye. X cubed, and I plug in infinity, is much bigger than x squared. So this goes to 0. So this doesn't matter. So as x gets very big and very large, this graph will seek this oblique asymptote, 3x plus 3. Okay? The remainder goes to 0, Bobo. Okay? So we divide, so what do we do? Bigger on top, I divided, okay? And notice I knew I had 1 degree difference. I knew it would be linear, and we'd have a linear asymptote, oblique asymptote, okay? All right. And that's what we got. Okay, now, notice, you can see that, I zoomed out so you can see here in red is the linear 3x plus 3. Notice how this graph, blue graph, adapts to this. And we've got kind of like a parabolic shape, but notice this back end starts becoming that line. Okay, it goes right into it. And as x gets very big, this thing, 1, 2, 3, it doesn't take long for x is to be 7 or 8, where it's basically the same line. Okay? Same thing down here. It just doesn't take very long. -6, -7, where blue and red are superimposed. I hope you can see that okay. All right? Notice, oh, this one here, sorry. Okay. Now, notice this, bigger, 2x to the 5th, x to the 3rd. Bigger on top, no horizontal asymptote. But notice, what's the difference in degree? 5 and 3. That's going to be x squared when I divide this out. Okay? When I divide this long division, divide by x cubed minus 1, I get 2x squared, and my remainder is this right here, 2x squared plus 2. Right away, I've got a remainder, because x to the x cubed doesn't go into x squared. So there's my remainder, okay? But notice, this parabolic shape, that's not an asymptote, okay? Asymptotes are lines, either horizontal asymptote, vertical asymptote, or an oblique asymptote. But the big thing is either vertical, horizontal, or oblique, okay? And on, but they are lines. This would be a parabolic shape, obviously, so that's not an asymptote, okay? All right, it's not an oblique asymptote, okay? So if you're going to get an oblique asymptote, it's got to be bigger on top, no horizontal, and the degree difference needs to be 1 between this and this, okay? All right, you've got a problem for a couple factoring problems. I want to show you the difference of cubes. You know the difference of squares, okay? If you have x cubed plus 8, that would factor out as, remember, this would be, x would be here's the formula. X cubed plus 8, we'll look at this formula. A cubed plus b cubed factors as a plus b. So if I've got, okay, times, so if I have x cubed plus 2 cubed, it would be x plus 2 times x squared minus 2x plus 2 squared. Okay? If it's a cubed minus b cubed, it's a minus b without the cubes, and then everything's plus. A squared plus ab plus b squared. So your ab comes from the a and the b here. Okay? All right, so write this down. The way I remember it, it's always the first term that doesn't have any squares or anything is just a cubed plus b cubed, a plus b, and then this is going to be opposite of that. A squared minus ab plus b squared. And then just for this, a cubed minus b cubed factors out as a minus b. And then you've got the a squared plus, it's the opposite, plus b squared. All right, so here's an example. X cubed minus 27. That really could be what? X cubed minus 3 cubed. So that's your A, that's your B, right? Okay? So remember, A, this factors out as what? A minus B, X minus 3, times A squared, or X squared. Remember, it was opposite, plus AB, X3, we'll put 3X, and then plus what? B squared, which is negative 3 squared is 9. And that'll help you factor that out, okay? All right, so we've got a problem tomorrow that maybe you can factor out as far as finding asymptotes and things. But that's something I wanted to add as far as your knowledge. You need to have this memorized. It'll help you factor, okay? Looks like we can't factor this any further, okay? All right? The factors of 9 will not add up to 3, okay? So we need, quadratic formula or completing the square. But at least we can get x minus 3 out of that, okay? All right? All right, that's difference of cubes, okay? That's difference of cubes, and forget it, that's just the formula for a cubed plus b cubed and a cubed. That's the difference of cubes, and that's the sum of cubes. Okay, all right. So remember those formulas. I hope I didn't go. I've got just a few problems for you to do tomorrow. Okay, and have a good weekend. All right.